Welcome back. This is the second of 3 videos about understanding SQL. In this video you will learn Welcome back. This is the second video in a series of 3 videos on SQL commands. In this video you'll learn about the commands to search a database and to edit the contents of a database. Commands to search the database will let you output data from the existing tables and fields of the database, and the edit commands will let you make changes to the data that is stored in the database. Remember that to test out these commands you can use a simulator. Remember to make sure that you copy the identifiers, the table and field names, exactly as shown in the example database, or the commands won't work. However, commands are not case sensitive, and line breaks and indentation are both optional, so that you can vary that and your commands will still work. So first of all, we're going to look at some search commands. The purpose of these commands is to find and output different items of data from the database. The 3 commands that we will look at are the select command, which lets us output different fields from a chosen table, the where command that lets us filter the output down to show only particular records from the database, and the like command, which lets us find records where we've only got a partial match. So the first SQL command that you will learn is the command select, and this lets us print out 1 or more columns from a table, and this command can be given on 1 line or 4 lines or however you want. So we start with the command select, then the names of 1 or more columns. If we've got several columns, put commas in between the names, from, and then the name of the table. We can also use a wildcard, so instead of the names of columns we can put a star or asterisk, and that will print out all the columns in that table. So let's look at a couple of examples. Select star from employees, that will print out all the columns in the employees table. Or select product name and unit from products, that will print out just those 2 fields from the products table. So what I suggest you do now is pause this video, go to the simulator and try those 2 commands and any other commands that you'd like to try. So if you've had a go at that, you'll have seen how the select commands work. Select columns from a table. Now we can filter the output down further using a command called where. So we give the word where, and then a Boolean condition, what I've also called a logical test or a Boolean expression with the values true or false. This is very, very similar to the use of Boolean expressions in Python, for example, at the start of an if statement. So let's have a look at an example. So here I'm selecting all the fields from the customer table where the country equals Sweden. So country equals Sweden is a Boolean condition, and this statement will print out the details of customers where the country is Sweden. So the command has this form. We give the name of a field, in this case country, then a relational operator, in this case the equal sign, and then secondly a value, in this case Sweden. Sweden is a string, so I've shown it in quote marks. You can use single or double quotes, and it needs to be an exact match. So up to now I've said upper and lowercase doesn't matter. Here it does matter. So if you did this with the lowercase s, it won't work because we're looking for the exact ASCII match. Let's have a look at another example. I'm selecting product name and price from the products table where the price is greater than 20. So I'm using the relational operator greater than, and you can use all the relational operators that you're familiar with. And finally, we can combine Boolean conditions using and, or, and not, just as we've learned to do in Python. Remember that you need to give the complete test on either side of the Boolean operator. So where city equals London or city equals Paris. You wouldn't say where city equals London or Paris, because it just wouldn't understand that. But other than that, we can add where to the end of a select statement, and that will filter our output, so it will only output the records where that Boolean condition is true. So once again, why not pause this video and go away and try those SQL statements and see what outputs you get. Sometimes we don't know exactly the value that we're looking for, and then we can use the like command instead of the other relational operators that you're familiar with. So like lets us use a wildcard, which is the percent sign, and that stands for anything. So that might sound confusing. It's probably easier to look at an example. So here I'm selecting city and country from the customers table, where the country begins with S. So for begins with S, we say like S percent. Percent is just, it means anything. So where it's anything beginning with S. Or if we could have percent %S, and that would be anything ending in S, or any other combination. Might sound a little bit more confusing. Why not pause the video now and have a go at some of those like statements. And just to conclude this section, have a go at some commands to produce the outputs shown on this screen. There's 4 different suggestions, getting progressively a little bit harder. What I suggest you do is pause the video now and try and produce all 4 of those outputs. Next, we'll turn to the edit commands. These let you make changes to the database. We're going to learn how to insert records into the database, to delete records from the database, and to update individual items of data. So the insert into command lets you add a new record to the database. It will typically add 1 record at a time. You don't have to provide data for every single column in the record. You can leave some of them blank and they'll just have null value. So let's have a look at that command. It starts with insert into and then the name of the table that you want to insert into, and then whatever columns you're going to provide. As I say, doesn't have to be all of them. Then the keyword values, and then give the list of the values for this record, separated by commas and in the same order as the list of columns. So if the columns go first name, last name, then the values must be the first name and then the last name in that order. Just the same as when we're doing parameters in a Python function. So let's have a look at that. Here I've inserted a customer into the customers table with those values that you can see there. So why not have a go of inserting your own name into the customers table. We can also delete, and we use a Boolean condition to delete records from a table. For example, delete from the customers table where the country is Sweden. So that would delete all the customers from Sweden from the table, if let's say you wanted to do that. If you forget to put the where command in, it will delete all the records from the customers table. That's fine. If you go to the simulator, you'll see a button that says reset the database. You just click it and it will reset the database. Remember that the database you're working with is a local copy of the database. You won't affect the main database. You'll just affect the copy on your computer, and you can reset that anytime you like. However, be aware that if you're using a real database, let's say if you ever have a job where you're working with an SQL database, then the delete command can be quite serious. You could wipe out a large amount of data. There is a rollback procedure that lets you reverse any catastrophic delete mistakes. It's outside the scope of the exam, so I'm not going to go into it here, but be aware and you can find out about it for yourself. There's also a command called drop, which is supposed to be, you can't change it. So if you drop a table or drop a database, that completely wipes it. However, I just checked, and there are people online who say we can restore your database if you've dropped it. Delete and drop are in the exam. Rollback isn't, but I think it's nice to know about it. And here's one final command, the last one in this presentation. This is not in the syllabus, so I don't think it'll come up in the exam, but I thought you might like to know it. This lets you set one data value in one particular column of the database. And as before, you can use the where command to identify particular records using a Boolean condition. Let's have a quick look at an example. For instance, here I'm changing the country Spain to the country España throughout the whole of the customer's database. So set the country to España, where the country at the moment is Spain, and that will just swap Spain to España. Or here's another example, find employee with the ID 10 and set the first name to Bat and the last name to Man. I did that because I saw he was called Adam West. And here are some edits that you can have a go at. Insert a record with your details into the employee table. It should automatically create a unique ID for that record, and then you can go to the order table and change some of the orders so that the employee ID is your ID. So have a go at that. There's one final video, and then you'll be done with the SQL work.